Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where we explore ways to get healthy, wealthy, and wise. With a combination of guest interviews and solo episodes, I hope you will be inspired and motivated to become the best of whatever you are. I'm Elle Russ, #1 best-selling author and subject expert with over a decade of helping thousands of people across the globe. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about free guides, masterclasses, online courses, and more. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back. Today we have an interesting one. I wanted to talk to you about a very powerful concept, and it has its origins in a strange place. It actually comes from one of the most sophisticated intelligence agencies out there. You've probably heard of them, especially in recent times, but it's called the Mossad. Mossad. And that is Israel's intelligence agency, like our FBI. Now, you've heard of them because in recent times they pulled an operation where multiple pagers exploded in southern Lebanon, but that is neither here nor there. The turmoil in the Middle East is not the point of this episode. But the concept I'm talking about is powerful, and it comes from the Mossad. So, the 10th man principle. Even though it got its roots in this high-stakes intelligence environment, national security, all of the stuff that spy movies are made of, there are really serious life lessons relevant to all of us, to our personal lives, our professional lives. And so I think you should consider adopting elements of this concept into your life. So how did this concept even come about? The concept of the 10th man principle, which I'll describe in a second, it came out of a need to counteract what is considered to be a very dangerous phenomena that happens in decision making. And this dangerous phenomena is called groupthink. So it's just one word, the word group and the word think. Groupthink. And it's dangerous because with groupthink, everyone in the group prioritizes harmony and consensus over critical evaluation. And so you can imagine that this could lead to some disastrous outcomes. But in the case of the Mossad or any intelligence agency where the stakes are literally life and death, groupthink is not a risk you want to take. Now, there are a lot of fascinating things about this concept, but basically, here's how the principle works. I'm going to tell you that in a minute. I'll get into how it came up and then also real-life practical applications in a variety of areas. Here's the principle. If 9 people in a group agree on a specific plan or they agree on an interpretation of events, it becomes the duty, literally the mandated duty of the 10th person to challenge everyone's views. Even if the 10th person agrees, they've got to challenge the prevailing view of those 9 people. Dissenting from those 9 people, it's just not even optional. It's an intentional position they put themselves in to play the devil's advocate role. And look, I mean, it's not to sow discord into the group or anything like that. It's really, the purpose of it is to rigorously test the group's assumptions. The 10th man principle is about ensuring that every potential flaw could be exposed and examined before moving forward. That's just very smart. Now, even though this idea was adopted by the Israeli intelligence agency, it actually is rooted in centuries of Jewish intellectual tradition because the way that they look at their own religion, the Torah, and their own scripture is a tradition of debate, of questioning, counter-argument. In fact, it is absolutely encouraged in studying the Torah that you must challenge it. There are not many other religions that say, please challenge everything we're telling you. They say, this is the word, and just live by it. But in the Jewish religion and their history is the opposite. They emphasize critical inquiry. And so the rigorous questioning, the challenging of the Torah, for example, in their religion, that's also not seen as antagonistic. It's not a like, well, I don't believe in God, I'm going to try to rip it apart. It's a cooperative effort. The whole purpose of challenging the Torah in the Jewish religion is to uncover the most accurate, meaningful insights from it. So it's kind of it's a religious cultural framework that preceded the 10th man principle, but that's sort of where it's rooted from. It makes perfect sense that this would be a principle that the Israeli Mossad would adopt. And again, dissent is not just like tolerated, it's actively encouraged. And the reason it's actively encouraged is because it's seen as a pathway to wisdom. It's a pathway to resilience. And in the case of national security, right, it could be life or death. So it's very important. Um, Long story short, this came out after the Israeli Mossad mistook warning signs, didn't take them seriously about an impending war in 1973. And after that, they were like, okay, we're going to instill this rule. But then decades later, not too long ago, when it happened on the very famous October 7th, when hostages were taken, the Mossad was sort of publicly embarrassed in the world. The memes and things on the internet were like, uh-oh, wait a minute, they're supposed to be the best. How could they have overseen this? Now, they'll probably never tell us, and we'll probably never know on whether or not they instituted that 10th man principle during discussions of warnings. Maybe they didn't get warnings. We don't know what goes on inside their intelligence. Then the world was like, oh, damn, uh-oh, wait a minute. I guess they're not as smart as they thought they were. And then they pulled the 1,000 pagers exploding at once in southern Lebanon. And people are like, oh, and the Mossad is back. So that's kind of how the world saw and looks at the Mossad. And that's why after October 7th, people were like, wait a minute, they're supposed to be the best. What happened? I don't know if they let the 10th man principle fall by the wayside in that scenario, but that was definitely a failure. So, but let's talk about the value in your life. Because what the 10th man principle really is the courage to question. So if you're in an environment, a world or an environment, a country, whatever, if you're in a world where conformity is rewarded, maybe dissent is punished in some way, perhaps you want to adopt the 10th man principle. I mean, not if you're going to get murdered over it, know the consequences, right? But it teaches us that disagreements aren't the enemy of progress, right? Disagreements are they're basically the fucking guardian of progress. Do you know what I mean? This principle is reminding us that some skepticism isn't necessarily negativity in this capacity. It's actually it's like an act of care and wisdom. You could see it as an act of responsibility, not negativity. So the value of this principle to me is immense. It prevents blind spots. So when you are encouraging dissent among others, or even like you're encouraging it to yourself, what you're doing is you're exposing vulnerabilities in your plans before they can turn into failures. It's preemptive. The 10th man principle is a success tool. Now, let me just jump back into that comment I just made about you're exposing vulnerabilities in your plans. You could also be exposing vulnerabilities in yourself that you know you need to rein in. Is there something you're about to approach that might expose some vulnerabilities about you? Do you have to go speak and you're shy? Is there a trigger that might come up because of a topic you're discussing that's personal? You might be able to preempt some potential vulnerabilities that might be exposed and catch you off guard and preempt them before it happens. The 10th man principle encourages innovation because if you think about it, when you have diverse perspectives, you're going to get more creative solutions. And those creative innovations or whatever, they're not going to emerge from just a single unified viewpoint of 9 people. So healthy critical skepticism, like the 10th man principle, is going to make decisions stronger. The decisions will probably be more likely to withstand real world challenges. And so how do you apply the 10th man principle to your life? Something that was born in the halls of an intelligence agency. Let's go through a couple of practical ways where cultivating a dissenting voice, whether it's in your workplace, your community, or whatever, can give you an advantage in life. All right, so it could be a trusted friend. You could have a colleague. Maybe it's even yourself. Um, your own internal dialogue that you need to have a dissenting voice with, so you can be the 10th person. So maybe not afraid to challenge the majority in a group if something doesn't sit right with you. Within reason, right? Don't risk your life. I always talk about in confidence and in speaking up. I would rather get my ego punched than my face. Sometimes you don't speak up. Sometimes it's not worth it. But your dissent in being the 10th person could be the key to avoiding a costly mistake even. And I have an example here. It's not necessarily dissent, but I spoke up about something that I really had no business speaking about because it's not my world. But I noticed something that actually avoided a very costly mistake for someone else. I was in Palau, Palau, one of my favorite places in the world. And anyway, I was there many, many years ago with a group of National Geographic underwater filmmakers. Now, I'm not an underwater filmmaker. I'm not even a scuba diver. I don't know anything about this stuff other than I had experience during that time many years ago of watching these underwater filmmakers on a few jobs. And as you can imagine, underwater filmmakers have huge glass camera housings so that their cameras don't get soaking wet and therefore destroyed. You know, some of these cameras are $50,000 or more. So the casing for your camera better be airtight when you start filming sharks 50 feet down, or else your equipment's going to be flooded and gone. So what I had noticed in just observing them getting ready to prepare for a dive was I had witnessed that when they were on the dock, one of the last things they would do is they would get their camera housing, and it would be empty, but they'd get their camera housing and they would dunk it under the water to test it for leaks, right? Smart. Go, let's just test it, make sure there's no leaks before I put my $100,000 camera in there and bring it under the surface of the sea. So I watched them do this. I know nothing about scuba diving, O-rings, cameras, underwater technology, okay? But I had noticed that just before they were going on the boat, they did not dunk their cases into water. And I'm just kind of staring at them. I'm watching them pack up their stuff and get ready. And I noticed that that step was missing. And this is just me as an observer, observing them before. And I noticed that this step is missing. Now, I could have been like, don't say anything. They probably did it. They've been doing this for 30 years. These guys are fucking pros. They know what's up. Whatever. They probably already did it and you didn't see them. But instead, I spoke up and I just said, hey, I I noticed something missing. Don't you guys normally test your housings, your camera housings for leaks first? I don't think I saw you do that. And then one of the guys, Johnny, he's like, oh my God, you're right. Holy shit, I must be jet lagged. Thank you. And he went to test his casing for the camera and it leaked. So my dissent, not really my dissent, but my speaking up there. I'm not an expert in this. I don't know shit. Who am I telling a 20-year-old veteran of underwater filmmaking that he missed a step? But you know what? He did. I'm glad I spoke up versus being like later on after his camera ruined, being like, oh, I noticed you guys missed that step. I didn't want to say anything. I figured they'd be like, why didn't you say anything? My $50,000 camera's ruined, right? Now, that's a simple one. It's not really a dissenting voice, but it's speaking up and challenging experts in a situation where you're not even an expert at all. And it could save the day. I mean, look, I don't know how many times over the decades that they were doing this that they missed that step, but this was the day they missed it. This was the day there was a problem. And this is the day that their camera avoided getting ruined. All right. So aside from being the 10th person, you can create a culture of it. So if you're in a leadership position, then what you can do is you foster an environment where people feel safe to disagree with you. So you have to encourage your team to play devil's advocate. And you also, part of this is also rewarding those who speak up. And so maybe that's like, oh, Joe, thank you so much. I love these counterpoints. These are important. If anything like this comes up in the future, don't be afraid to speak your mind. I want to encourage you to bring up all that kind of stuff. Because why do you want to encourage your team to do this? It doesn't just strengthen decision-making. It definitely does. It builds trust and collaboration with your team. Obviously, this is not just a theoretical tool for intelligence agencies. It's actually a practical mindset. So it can improve your decision-making. It definitely improves resilience. let's say it's a career decision, a career move, switching industries, accepting a new job, something like that, you can encourage yourself or someone else to be the dissenting opinion, the 10th man. Maybe you just need to ask yourself some questions like, hey, have you fully evaluated the risks and the benefits of this job? Pros and cons? What skills do you need to thrive in this role? Do you have them? If you don't have them, can you learn them? Does this new position align with my long-term goals? This is playing quote unquote skeptic, although I just like 10th man as a better concept in a positive way. Skeptic denotes kind of a downer vibe, and 10th man denotes a critical thinking vibe, which is positive. So, whether it's yourself or having someone else do it for you and challenge you, be the 10th man, it could even just help you feel confident that you're making a calculated, informed choice rather than being impulsive in a situation. And while I do believe your gut is the ultimate determining factor, sometimes you have to sort of 10th man it to see if the gut feeling is accurate and not based on fear or something else or impulse, right? Or too much excitement, etc. You could use this with health choices. Let's say you're faced with a medical advice or something like that, and everyone agrees on a course of treatment. Maybe you need to be the 10th man. Asking critical questions. Are there alternative treatments? What are the side effects? How does this impact the quality of my life in the long term? And so on. And it doesn't mean you're rejecting advice. It means you're ensuring that you understand your options. That's really the way to look at it. Parenting has pitfalls of group thinking. So let's just say a bunch of parents in your circle are advocating for, I don't, it could be anything, could be like a certain educational method or whatever. But maybe you need to take the time and reflect and go, hold on a minute. I know they're doing all this shit for their kids. Does this action align with my child? Are there other approaches that could be more effective than theirs or more effective than the one I have now? Because when you apply this 10th man principle to your own family, it's just going to help make more personalized decisions easier, and make those decisions more sound. Right. Same thing with financial advice. Maybe you're enthusiastic about a house or you're stoked on something. Maybe you just need to play the 10th man, not to be a downer, not to worst case scenario it because of a lack of confidence in oneself in self. But it could be like, hey, did I prepare a cushion if things don't go as well as planned? Is this the best time to buy this house or do this investment? And this kind of scrutiny and 10th manning it, aside from preventing costly errors and all of that kind of stuff, it actually all helps solidify what your true gut feeling is. So you can volunteer to be the 10th man in any scenario. If you're at work in a group environment, you can test that and go, hey, look, let me play the devil's advocate here. Have we tested this idea under different scenarios? What's our fallback plan? What are some unforeseen challenges? How would we deal with those challenges if they did come up? Because playing the 10th man is a collaborative situation. It's going to strengthen the project, but like I said before, it's going to ensure that blind spots are not overlooked and also makes you a very valuable member of the team. Here's the thing. We're also living in a world of viral trends, viral opinions, viral conspiracies, right, and all that shit. So anyone can get swept up. And as far as that all goes, before you share information, before you act on information, perhaps you need to pause and 10th man it and go, hold up, is this credible? What is the source on this? Maybe I need to look further at that source and the credibility. Who's their person? What's the story? Is there another side to this? What are the counterpoints? Because this habit right here fosters critical thinking, and that helps you avoid, in this situation anyway, with like the viral stuff online, it helps you avoid misinformation pitfalls. And just overall being the 10th man in your own personal growth. Maybe you're looking forward to adopting a new self-improvement habit this year, a new mindset, a new life philosophy. I mean, but like, here's a good one. One of the new things everyone's like, hey, well, here's a big trend, like the wake up at 5 a.m. trend, you know, and people are like, oh, yeah, maybe I need to change my schedule. It's like, hold on a minute. Does this fit with your lifestyle? Are there other routines that would work better for you, even better than the one you have now? And then maybe ask yourself, well, what would be the downsides of forcing this habit everyone is doing and forcing it on myself? When you ask yourself these questions, when you play the 10th man, you're going to ensure that your choices are personalized, that they're effective. They're not just going with the crowd. And one of my favorite quotes, I don't know who actually came up with this quote, but I did hear it from Dr. Wayne Dyer years ago. He said, when you follow the herd, you step in shit. And being the 10th man avoids that. You could use the 10th man principle for conflicts because if you're in a personal disagreement, you could use this to either challenge your own assumptions, right? Like asking yourself, am I seeing the full picture here? Am I missing something from this person's perspective? Is my reaction contributing to the conflict, right? These are all really great questions to use within conflict resolution. It's going to foster empathy. And again, it's just going to foster creative solutions, meaningful ones. And life is uncertainty. This is a tool for navigating uncertainty. And how about just embracing a mindset of critical thinking, intellectual humility about understanding? Like, no matter how confident you are, you could be wrong, and you might need to value some voices or take some idea hits, idea challenges, even if it's uncomfortable. And then maybe after this, you can think about some times in life where maybe you fell into the trap of groupthink. Did you go along with something just because that decision was popular? Did you get roped up into some group that was kind of culty MLM or something like that, and you got out and you're like, oh boy, that was a close call? Did it seem easier than raising objections or raising your hand to just go along with the group? Have we ignored a gut feeling because everyone else seems so sure? The example of the 10th man in my own life, I have a million of them, but one I can think of, which is a life or death groupthink, was the 2018 Woolsey Fire in Malibu. It burned 100,000 acres, and I literally lived right in the middle, the center of the 100,000 acres that burned. So I evacuated in the morning and drove down to a friend's house. Then the fire came all the way down to the friend's house and we had to evacuate. The friend's house was right on Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, which is sort of like right near the ocean there, the Ocean Highway. And I'm leaving the house. I literally get out of the home area driveway situation and I'm right there on Pacific Coast Highway. And this is what I could see. Cars for miles headed south, headed towards getting away from the fire. Now, I had to make a split decision, and in my mind, I went through all the scenarios. The thing is that I had less than a quarter of a tank of gas left. So I had to look at the quick scenario. The split decision I made was the gut decision I made that saved my life. But instead of going to Pacific Coast Highway and follow the herd, follow the group, my instinct was to go to the beach. Now, the beach across from Pacific Coast Highway where I was is called Zuma Beach, Z-U-M-A. You can look it up. It's a very thick, long beach. They have a helipad there and a Coast Guard station. It's like a substantial beach. There's restrooms, there's parking lots, and the beach is so thick with sand that it doesn't matter if it's high tide. There's always sand. So in my mind, I was thinking, all right, I've got two options. I can go left, but if I run out of gas, I might burn up on the highway. The fire could reach the highway. I don't know where at that point I will be on Pacific Coast Highway. Now I'm looking at running to a cliff and jumping in the ocean, which I don't even know what, I know all of Malibu like the back of my hand, but I couldn't predict where I would have ended up. So the scenario of turning on a Pacific Coast Highway for me was way more detrimental because it had potentials in there that could go wrong. When I knew that if I just went to the beach, without a doubt, I would survive. Like there wasn't even a question. I am not going to burn to death at the beach. Not that beach, that's for sure. And I'm really glad I did that. It saved me. And it probably saved other people who were trying to evacuate on Pacific Coast Highway. What if I was holding them up with a car that ran out of gas and now I'm causing traffic or issues? I could be dead now if I ignored my gut instinct that said, go to the beach, even though everyone is headed that way, even though groupthink said escape. But I looked at that. What are the outcomes? One has too many risks. One is I know for sure I'm surviving. And I helped someone else make this decision. The conundrum was happening. The person was thinking about getting in their car, and I said to them, look, here's the deal. This is what went through my mind. I don't have much gas, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what your story is, but if we go down to Zuma, for sure we will survive. We know that for sure. But we don't know what's ahead of us on Pacific Coast Highway. The fire is already coming down to the beach now. I mean, essentially the cliffs on the beach. Later on, I ran into that guy at the parking lot at Zuma Beach when we were all sort of evacuated and slept there for, overnight. He came up to me and he said, thank you so much. This was the better decision. Thank you so much. You saved me on that. I convinced him. I said, go to the beach because we know for sure it's the savior. We know for sure. We don't know about the other. So I 10th manned it myself in that moment. I reassured my gut that was the right decision, and it was. And to this day, I am so glad I went against the groupthink of escaping, and I basically headed right into the fire, sort of. So in a world that moves quickly, right? The stop and reflect on this principle, the stopping and the asking of the hard questions. You're going to make better choices. Be the 10th man, right? Encourage the 10th man as well. Don't fear dissent, because this is the baseline of wisdom and resilience. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Go ahead and reach out anytime you want. You can find me, Elle, at elleruss.com, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this show, I would so appreciate you leaving a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about partner discounts on amazing products, visit elleruss.com/discounts.